mean, dairy farming is no joke.
And when you're in it, you don't really realize how you're processing, but I mean, you're owned by these cattle.
Straight into a football college scholarship.
He didn't even really watch much of my football. He recruited me because he had seen some of my basketball highlights.
Football was your way out? How'd you figure that out?
To be straight up, it was our escape.
How'd you wind up at the Jaguars from there?
To play at what I considered big time football. It was Division II football, right?
Welcome to the Mountain Tough podcast, brought to you by Sig Sauer. I definitely wanted to talk about, the NFL career and how you got there from the farm. I know that was a pretty big leap for you coming from a small dairy farming community. Is that correct?
Yeah, man. I grew up in South Dakota on a little dairy farm. It had been a kind of a family farm, and when you're in it, you don't really realize how you're processing, but I watched my dad and then other generations, basically struggle and suffer, all trying to make an income, which was amazing. I mean, I always was provided for, but to watch that struggle, especially with dairy farming, it's such a precise profession. I mean, you're owned by these cattle. And so my mind was like, I got to get off the farm, man.
Yeah, that is a hard work. I mean, dairy farming is no joke. How many people were like in your high school graduating class?
42. I was one of 42.
Dang. So
Small, dude.
town. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And did you know that football was your way out? Or how'd you figure that out?
I mean, it became evident. I had an older brother. I still have an older brother. My older brother was gritty and tough and a farm kid as well. And so, we both, you know, veered towards the athletic route. And it didn't matter if it was football, it was wrestling early in our lives, and then it turned to basketball and then football, and then there was track involved. We just kind of did all the sports, and it was really our escape, man. To be straight up, it was our escape to get out of chores and get off the farm. And so that was kind of what happened. And then there were just pain points, there's different pain points in my life to where sports, football in particular, offered an opportunity to express my anger in a somewhat constructive way.
Yeah, hitting people is a good way to get some of that anger out.
Yeah, and you had a helmet on so your head could be used as a weapon. We didn't have quite the concussion protocol back then that we do now.
And then did you go from the farm to straight into a football college scholarship?
Yeah, so I was fortunate. Three in-state, I grew up in South Dakota, three in-state schools, all Division II schools recruited me. I ended up landing at a school called Augustana College, which is now Augustana University in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And man, the coach was awesome. He recruited me. He believed in me. He didn't even really watch much of my football. He recruited me because he had seen some of my basketball highlights, and actually saw me play at the state tournament. We had some good little teams in our little farming community, and so it granted me access and opportunity, of course, to play at what I considered big time football. It was Division II football right there in Sioux Falls. And I redshirted my first year, fell in love with the weight room. And then the next year, gained about 40 pounds during that time, and came on the next year and got opportunities to get on the field right away as a redshirt freshman.
Awesome. Yeah, that was probably a pretty good era of your life coming off the farm into that environment. Were you having a blast at that time?
I was. I mean, my version of blast then was you get to the college level. Not only are you facing better opponents, not only do you have access to better tools and weight rooms and coaching, it also socially, growing up on the farm, I was pretty straight-laced, never really dabbled in much alcohol. So I honestly started to party a little bit. It was kind of activating some of the crazy stuff in me too off the field. And I can't say that always went great. At that time, I was on a path that was definitely not spiritual in any way. It was just living what I thought was this dream of playing football and getting a degree. I didn't really wasn't aiming at the NFL early in my college career, but then met my who's now my wife, met her first year in college. And so all these things were happening during that time. Looking back, man, it was
Yeah.
being so ordered to culminate in even what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Yeah. Step by step. And how'd you wind up at the Jaguars from there?
So yeah, I had a lot of success on the field. I stayed healthy and was an All-American 2 years in a row. Going into my senior year, that off season, coming off my junior season, a scout came through and I had a great day. I worked out for him. I had a really good workout. I had good times, good vertical, tested well. They do a little mental test and just interviewed well with this guy. And he represented 14 different teams in the NFL. He was just kind of a regional scout, and he gave me a really high grade. And so going into my senior year, it brought in multiple NFL teams to my little college, to come in for practices, get it, the eyeball test, all those types of things. And
Mm-hmm.
then when I graduated college, I ended up moving out to Phoenix, where my agent was. My wife and I, we had taken out a $10,000 loan and we were going all in on this dream and was out there training with these guys before the draft. I ended up going to the Senior Bowl, ended up going to the Combine, which those two opportunities were massive for me, especially as a small college guy. And throughout
Mm-hmm.
that process, I didn't realize that the Jaguars, I'd caught their eye. They kind of kept it close to the vest, but then on draft day, in 1995, back when, the 1900s, man, when the phones were still attached to the wall. I was sitting in my little one-bedroom apartment, couldn't leave because you had to stay by your phone, and got that phone call. I was the 64th pick overall that year, and ended up going in the second round to the Jaguars. So Coughlin called
Dang.
me, and dude, it's one of those moments where your life is being transformed by one phone call.
One
And
phone call.
one call, dude, and
Yeah.
and on the other end was Tom Coughlin, who is going to be a Hall of Fame. He'll definitely be in the Hall of Fame. And he just said,
Mm-hmm.
"Schwartz, hey, you ready to be our middle linebacker?" And it was an instantaneous yes. And that's a lot when I talk to people or try to help people. I'm like, man, all God needs is our yes, and
Mm-hmm.
it'd be ridiculous for me to refuse that offer, right? And
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
was it. I got drafted, and next week I was on a plane to Jacksonville, Florida, a place we'd never visited. And man, the power of that promise, what it offered, right? Sizing that promise, man, it reframed any issues of like problems became real small when the promise was real big.
Yeah. Yeah. Before that moment, before Coughlin's call, you probably felt like you were struggling a little bit in that apartment with your wife and not really knowing what the next season of life was going to look like. Was there some worry and doubt in that time?
Oh, for sure. I think my whole life I doubted my greatness, and fortunately I had coaches along the way that could see something in me that I couldn't see myself.
Mm.
And yeah, even on draft day, I was a small college player. I was projected to go low first round or could go all the way in the fifth round because it was just a lot of unknowns being a small college guy. And so even on draft day, that first day, they had the first two rounds back then. And call after call after call after call, and it gets to the very last pick of the second round. You're sitting there going, well, we may have to wait till tomorrow. And then the call came. And it's just
Oh,
amazing, in each of our
yeah.
lives. I think we have those moments where an opportunity presents itself that just it just overwhelms all your anxiety and all your fear because somebody else believed in you. And I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
big part of this. I know it's part of my story. I know it's a part of your story. Is just when somebody believes in you and is
Yeah.
willing to invest in you and see something that you maybe can't see in yourself, it really does force you to have to. I had to change my mindset because I went from being like the mindset of trying to make it, small college guy, always having to overcome, always being overlooked. Well, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have that excuse anymore. I wasn't overlooked. So now I had
You
to
were
shift
there.
my mindset to go, no, I'm actually good enough. I actually have an ability and a greatness that God's put in me, and I have to get comfortable with that and start using that a different way.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's that one phone call that changed everything. And then that it happened to be with Coughlin too, who is gonna be a Hall of Famer. What was it what was it like when you got there and got to spend some time with him, and what are some of the attributes that make him such an exceptional leader?
It was his relentlessness, his consistency when it came to process.
Mm,
He never let us settle. Like we were a brand new expansion team, so it was the first year of the team in Jacksonville. We knew our first years could be tough, but he never let us think like we were not able to win. And so he had this mindset of winning, not at all costs, but it kind of felt like that, but he never let us settle. I mean, that's what, if when I look back, I'm like, I'm so grateful that I was with a leader that didn't let me aim low. Everything was exceptional. Everything was about being the best and elite, sometimes a little obsessive compulsive.
mm,
But when you've got somebody that doesn't let you settle, and then he has the consistent process. Um, One of the things that I developed from that is the process is the prize. Like
mm.
with a guy like that, the process became a prize because it's the same process that now leads to dividends, even in what I'm doing now. It's the relentless pursuit of greatness, and then now having the worldview I have, and having some transformation spiritually, I look through a whole different lens with that too. And the
Yeah.
other side of it too, Dustin, was I learned that pressure was a privilege.
Mhm.
There was prize in the process, but then pressure was a privilege. And to play at
Mm.
that level and the expectations that were put on you, it puts such pressure on you, but you either learn to see pressure as a partner, or pressure can cause you to crumble.